Thank you for this opportunity to discuss leadership. Throughout my career, I've had many opportunities to take on leadership roles, and some of them on purpose and some of them just by happenstance. One thing I've always believed that we've got to be ready for or be aware of is that we never know when we're going to have to be a leader, take on that role. Everyone does it at one time or another. It could be a simple little thing as leading a group of kids into a playground, or it could be, well, we'll get into some bigger stories as we go on. I always believe that there's a reason for things and that there's a formula behind it. There's a formula to develop your leadership, a formula for growth, a formula for your future. So I'd come up with this one here. I'd found it, and with the courtesy of the many, many smart minds of NASA, they actually came up with it for me. And it took me a little time to figure it out, and actually, mathematically I couldn't figure it out, but it is a true formula. So, knowing what the answer was, which I was fortunate to do, I come up with my own answer for it, or my own way of displaying it. And it's as simple as this. As it shows here, we're being well above average. And that is the goal to leadership. That's the goal to leadership growth, is being well above average. Each and every day, a new average is set, new expectations are set, and our role is to grow as a leader. So the only way we're going to do it is each and every day take another step to grow. And in order to do that, everything we do, all of our growth must be well above average. So in my lessons, in my time as a leader, the first thing I learned that regardless when I started out very young and to the age I'm at now, the one point that always stood out is that leadership starts where you stand. Doesn't matter if it's in a kitchen, on a deck, on a highway, in a school, leadership starts right where you stand. And you've got to be prepared to take that opportunity. Or you've got to be prepared when that opportunity comes because you've got no choice. You are the leader. So to give you an example of this, I've spent 30 years as a paramedic, frontline ambulance work for over 27 years, and I've seen many, many different things, many stories you know, I don't even want to remember, but there are lessons that come from each and every one of them. This is just one of my many leadership stories. I started off at once upon a time, but I just do want to let you know this is a true event. While I was standing on my barbecue, I was barbecuing these most beautiful steaks. They were absolutely amazing steaks. Looking out at the weather, it's a beautiful sunny day, probably in comparison about 90 above. Here it had been 34, 35 above Celsius in Canada. And looking at these storm cells out there, out in the distance, and we get lots of storms in that area, so it wasn't much of a worry. And looking to the east, and two storm cells were kind of coming together, and again, this was nothing unusual. Just got my steak on the plate when our tones went off for our ambulance call. The call came in as a tree fell down, one person seriously injured, six or seven with cuts and bruises. So, being the most senior person on the crews, I got all three crews to respond. There was one crew in front of us, and they never did even make it on site because they picked up someone even before they got to the site. As we got onto the site and rolled around the corner, this is what we saw. Absolute devastation. As we pulled up, there were what looked to be golf ball size hail all over the place, and it was actually true golf balls, different colors from the driving range. And then we looked out and saw hundreds, and I do mean hundreds of people wandering around like an absolute disaster zone. An F3 tornado had come through a campground, and although there were two policemen there before us, their opening remark to me was, "Sterling, we are so glad you're here. What do you want us to do?" Whether I wanted it or not, I was thrown into a leadership role. The devastation was all around us. There was, in my estimate, 600 to 700 people milling around. There were people who were injured, people with fractures. 2 hours and 14 minutes later, we had cleared 136 people by ambulance, by air ambulance and ground ambulance off the site. There were 11 dead and multiple injuries, from the worst possible traumatic injuries to cuts and bruises. And we haven't even counted yet the mental health injuries that would come from this. Leadership started where I stood. So some of the lessons that I've learned as a leader. As a leader, you need to have vision. The vision can be a big picture vision for your crew, for your group, for the project you're working on, but it's got to be big. It's got to be, as they say, a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, something bigger than you that you may never achieve, but your path there is what is going to make it important. With this event, I did have a big vision. My big vision was to get all the responders off that site safely. But in order to do that, which took 17 days, we had to take the first step, creating safety, triaging the sick and injured, moving people out, getting them to the proper facilities. We were very fortunate that of all those transported, and some with ugly injuries, nobody else died. The 11 dead that were on scene were there. The vision was not just to get them off, but to get the responders off as well, safely. And again, that took 17 days before it was completely closed. The next step is humility. And I'm going to stop right here because I'm over my 5 minutes and I'd like to have you review. Thank you.